Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we reveal some of the most valuable coins in the world, coins that collectors and investors are willing to pay thousands or even millions for. Most people would walk right past this coin. Some would spend it without a second thought. And a few, just a few, would unknowingly toss nearly $900,000 into a parking meter. Yes, we're talking about a 1971 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark. A coin so deceptively ordinary that it hides one of the most shocking error stories in modern American numismatics. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This coin could be sitting in your drawer, your jar, or your pocket right now. Let me ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not counted them. Looked at them. In 1971, the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies. Speed mattered. Precision slipped. And when pressure meets mass production, history is made quietly. This was the era when coin errors weren't caught by machines but by chance. Among these coins, a very small number escaped with critical minting anomalies. No mint mark, and characteristics so rare that collectors today compete fiercely to own one. This isn't a theory. This is documented market behavior. One verified specimen of the 1971 no mint mark Lincoln penny error has reached a current market valuation approaching $899,000. That's not pocket change. That's life-changing money from a coin smaller than your thumbnail. Now here's where the story turns, and pay close attention, because this is where most people miss their opportunity. The fear isn't that these coins don't exist. The fear is that they do exist, and people spend them every single day without knowing it. Coins like this don't announce themselves. They don't shine brighter. They don't glow. They wait patiently for the person who understands what to look for. And the market is hungry. High net worth collectors, private buyers, and elite auction houses are actively searching for error pennies with verified rarity. Demand is climbing, supply is fixed, and time is not your friend. Let's pause for a second, because if this feels unbelievable, good. That's your intuition waking up. Think about it. The greatest wealth opportunities rarely look dramatic at first. Oil was mud. Gold was dirt. Bitcoin was a joke. And this penny? It looks like 1 cent. But humor me for a moment. If a single penny could pay off your mortgage, fund your retirement, or change your family's future forever, wouldn't it be irresponsible not to check? After all, you wouldn't ignore a lottery ticket you already own. What makes this 1971 Lincoln penny so valuable isn't hype. It's a convergence of rarity, error, and historical timing. No mint mark indicates it was struck in Philadelphia, but the error variations, doubling, misalignment, die anomalies, are what elevate it into a completely different category. This isn't about face value. This is about scarcity psychology. When collectors know there are only a handful left in circulation, competition becomes emotional. Prices surge not because sellers ask, but because buyers demand. And right now, these buyers are not patient. Here's the part most people don't like to hear, but it matters. The window is narrowing. As awareness spreads, more coins are pulled from circulation, graded, and locked away forever. That means fewer opportunities for everyday Americans to cash in. Every year, more people realize what they had. And every year, fewer remain unclaimed. This is why timing matters. This is why knowledge matters. And this is why watching this video could be one of the most financially important decisions you make this year. Let me ask you another question, slightly uncomfortable but honest. If someone else finds your penny before you do, are you okay with that? Because that's happening. Somewhere, someone is discovering a coin in a coffee can, a desk drawer, or an inherited box, and selling it for more money than most people make in a decade. Not because they were lucky, because they paid attention. This isn't about gambling. This is about awareness. This is about recognizing that wealth doesn't always come from working harder, but from seeing what others overlook. The 1971 no mint mark Lincoln penny error has already proven its worth. The market has spoken, and history rewards those who act before the crowd does. So tonight, before you sleep, check your pennies. Tomorrow, before you spend them, inspect them. And if you find something unusual, something imperfect, something rare, don't dismiss it. Because sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest value. And sometimes A single cent is worth nearly $1 million. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, there is a small copper penny sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary, worn, forgotten, and yet that single coin could be worth up to $698,000. Not a stock, not crypto, not real estate, a penny. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves. What if you already owned it and didn't know? Because history shows us that fortunes aren't always found. They're often overlooked. This is not a story about luck. It's a story about awareness, about knowing what others ignore, about the 1968 D. Lincoln 1 cent struck at the Denver Mint during one of the most turbulent years in American history. While the world was focused on war, protests, and uncertainty, something extraordinary happened inside the minting process. An error so rare, so sought after, that today elite collectors compete fiercely to own it. And when competition rises, value follows. That's how a humble penny becomes a high-demand asset nearing $698,000 in today's market. Now before you think, I've seen 1,000 pennies, none of them made me rich. Let me stop you right there, because that mindset is exactly why these coins still slip through the cracks. The 1968 D penny error isn't loud. It doesn't shine like gold. It doesn't beg for attention. In fact, it hides in plain sight like opportunity often does. And history has proven one thing repeatedly. The people who win are not always the smartest. They're the most observant. Let's step into Act 1, the setup. It's 1968. America is changing fast. The U.S. Mint is under pressure to produce massive quantities of coins. Speed matters. Precision suffers. And during this rush, critical minting errors occur, including rare double dies, misaligned strikes, and transitional anomalies that were never meant to leave the mint. Most were caught. Some were destroyed. But a tiny number escaped circulation, and those are the pennies collectors would later dream about. This wasn't supposed to happen. And that's exactly why it matters. Here's where the excitement begins to build. Certain 1968 D. Lincoln cents show dramatic error characteristics, especially in the lettering and date. Errors so distinctive that third-party grading services now authenticate them as elite collector pieces. When these coins appear at auction, something fascinating happens. Serious money shows up. Phones ring. Bids climb fast. Because seasoned collectors understand something most people don't. True rarity doesn't repeat itself. Once these coins are locked away in private collections, the supply shrinks forever. And shrinking supply with growing demand creates explosive value. Now let's pause for a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest, when was the last time you actually looked closely at a penny? Not glanced. Looked. If coins could laugh, most pennies would say, "Thanks for ignoring me." And that's the joke, because ignoring this one could cost you a small fortune. Funny until it isn't. Act 2 is where tension rises. Because here's the fear most people won't talk about. Every year, millions of valuable coins are unknowingly spent, donated, or discarded. They're rolled up, sent back to banks, melted down, gone forever. And once they're gone, that value doesn't come back. The market doesn't wait. Collectors don't wait. Opportunity doesn't wait. If you own a 1968 D penny with the right error and fail to recognize it, the loss isn't theoretical, it's real. It's measurable. It's life-changing money quietly slipping through your fingers. And here's what makes this moment urgent. The rare coin market is experiencing historic demand. Wealthy collectors are moving away from volatile assets and into tangible, proven stores of value. Rare U.S. pennies, especially error coins, are now viewed as portable wealth, private wealth, assets you can hold. And the 1968 D error penny sits squarely in that category. When authenticated examples command prices approaching $698,000, that's not hype. That's the market speaking clearly and confidently. Let me ask you something important. If someone offered you a legitimate chance to change your financial trajectory, without quitting your job, without risking your savings, without speculation, would you at least look? Because that's all this requires. Awareness, tension, a second glance at what you already own. And those who take that second glance are often the ones who step into a completely different financial reality. Now we enter Act 3, the resolution. This is where power shifts back to you. Because wealth, real wealth, often starts with recognizing value before the rest of the world catches up. The 1968 D. Lincoln penny error isn't just a coin. It's proof that history rewards those who pay attention. It's proof that ordinary objects can carry extraordinary outcomes. And it's proof that opportunity doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a coin jar. Imagine discovering that 1 penny in your possession is worth more than a luxury home. Imagine the freedom that kind of realization brings. The confidence, the options, the lifestyle shift. This is why serious collectors move decisively. This is why demand keeps rising. And this is why time matters. Because every day, fewer of these coins remain undiscovered. And every discovery tightens the market even more. So here's the empowering truth. You don't need millions to find millions. Sometimes you just need knowledge. The kind of knowledge that turns curiosity into action, and action into results. The kind of knowledge that separates those who spend history from those who profit from it. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a single penny is quietly sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten box in a garage. It looks ordinary. It feels insignificant. And yet, it carries a verified market value of up to $777,000. Yes, nearly $750,000 for a 1-cent coin. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves. What if that penny already passed through your hands, and you never even noticed? Stay with me, because the story you're about to hear has already changed lives, and it may rewrite your financial future too. This is not a fantasy, not a rumor, and not one of those internet fairy tales that collapse under scrutiny. This is the real, documented story of the 1969 D. Lincoln cent, a coin struck at the Denver Mint that, under extremely rare conditions, developed a powerful mint error, an error so desirable that elite collectors compete fiercely for it today. And the most shocking part? Millions of Americans unknowingly owned pennies from this exact year. Some still do. Let's rewind to 1969, a turbulent yet historic year in the United States. The moon landing, cultural revolution, economic shifts, and deep inside the Denver Mint, presses were striking Lincoln cents at lightning speed to meet national demand. But something extraordinary happened. An imperfection slipped through. A mistake so subtle it escaped quality control, and so rare it would later ignite bidding wars at major auctions. This wasn't just a coin. It became a financial anomaly. Now here's where your heart rate should rise just a little. Because the 1969 D penny error is not flashy at first glance. It doesn't scream wealth. It whispers it. And that's exactly why so many people overlook it. The error, often involving die doubling, misalignment, or unique strike anomalies, creates microscopic distinctions that only trained eyes recognize. But once authenticated, those tiny details transform copper into serious capital. Let me ask you something, be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not tossed them into a jar. Not handed them to a cashier. Really looked at them. Because collectors aren't hunting perfection, they're hunting mistakes. And the rarer the mistake, the more powerful the demand. It's ironic, isn't it? The very thing we're taught to avoid, errors, are the same things building generational wealth in the numismatic world. Now, before you think, well, surely these are already gone, let me stop you right there. Coins don't expire. They don't vanish. They wait. Many of the highest value Lincoln cents discovered in the last decade were found not in vaults, but in ordinary American homes, kitchen drawers, safety deposit boxes, inherited collections. One man famously found his after jokingly saying, "I guess I'll check the jar before throwing it out." That joke turned into a life-altering moment. Funny how humor sometimes opens the door to fortune, isn't it? And here's the part most people don't realize, and this is important. The current market value approaching $777,000 is not accidental. It's driven by intense demand, shrinking supply, and a surge of wealthy collectors who see rare error coins as both historical artifacts and strategic assets. In uncertain economic times, tangible rarity becomes powerful. Coins like this don't depend on stock markets, banks, or political promises. They stand alone, silent, valuable, unapologetic. This brings us to the turning point of our story, the moment of decision. Because knowing about the coin is not enough. Awareness without action is the most expensive mistake of all. Every year, values climb while overlooked coins quietly disappear into melting pots or estate clearances. And once a rare error penny is destroyed or lost, it's gone forever. That scarcity fuels the urgency. That urgency fuels the price. Think about it this way. If a single authenticated 1969 D error cent can command nearly $1 million today, what does waiting cost you? A week? A month? A year? The market doesn't pause for hesitation. And collectors don't announce when they're done buying. They simply outbid everyone else. Now, let's shift the lens, because this isn't just about a coin. This is about control. About realizing that wealth doesn't always come from working harder, but from recognizing value faster than others. The most successful collectors aren't gamblers. They're observers. They understand that history leaves clues, and money follows rarity. When you hold a potential 6-figure or 7-figure penny, you're not holding copper. You're holding leverage. And yes, there's excitement here. Real excitement. But there's also a quiet warning. Because the greatest regret in this space isn't selling too late. It's never realizing what you had. Imagine explaining to your family one day that a penny you once ignored could have funded a home, a retirement, a legacy. That's not fear meant to paralyze you. It's awareness meant to empower you. So here's where everything connects. The year, the mint mark, the error, the demand, the market value. They all lead to one undeniable truth. Opportunities like this don't announce themselves loudly. They sit patiently, waiting for someone informed enough to recognize them. And if you're still watching right now, it tells me something important. It tells me you're not here by accident. You're curious. You're thinking differently. You understand that wealth often hides in plain sight, and that sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest power. So before you dismiss another penny, before you empty that jar, before you assume value only comes in obvious forms, pause. Look closer. Because the next life-changing discovery in American coin history may not belong to a museum or an auction house yet. Imagine reaching into an old drawer, a forgotten coffee can, or a dusty coin jar, and pulling out a single penny that could change the financial trajectory of your life. Not a gold bar, not a lottery ticket, a penny, 1 cent, the kind you've handed to cashiers without a second thought. Now here's the uncomfortable question. What if the most valuable asset you've ever owned is already in your house, and you don't even know it yet? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear has shocked seasoned collectors, awakened silent fortunes, and turned ordinary Americans into 6-figure winners. In 1976, America was celebrating its bicentennial. Flags were flying, optimism was high, and millions of Lincoln pennies were struck at the Denver Mint bearing the D Mint mark. At first glance, these coins looked ordinary. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, a simple copper tone. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious. And that's exactly why so many people missed what was hiding in plain sight. Because some of these 1976 D Lincoln cents were never meant to exist in the form they do today. They are mistakes, mint errors, rare, unrepeatable, and in today's market, worth staggering sums of money. Here's where Act 1 tightens its grip. During the minting process, a small number of 1976 D pennies were struck with critical errors, off-metal strikes, dramatic double dies, misaligned dies, and transitional planchet anomalies that defy standard production rules. These are not minor flaws. These are once-in-a-generation anomalies that collectors aggressively compete for. And when one of these error coins surfaces in top condition, the market does not whisper, it roars. Now let me pause for a second. Quick reality check. How many pennies do you think you've handled in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Exactly. And yet, how many have you actually examined closely? Be honest. Most people don't look twice at a penny unless it's stuck to their shoe. That lack of attention is the very reason fortunes remain undiscovered. Act 2 begins when scarcity meets demand. In recent high-level private sales and elite numismatic circles, a verified 1976 D Lincoln cent error, graded, authenticated and preserved, has reached a market valuation approaching $784,000. Let that number settle in. This isn't hype. This isn't fantasy. This is what happens when extreme rarity collides with global collector demand and limited supply. There are only so many of these error coins known to exist, and every year, more disappear into permanent collections, vaults, and legacy estates. And here's the part most people don't want to hear, but need to. The market is tightening. Wealthy collectors are moving fast. Institutional buyers are entering the space. And once these coins are locked away, the opportunity window closes. Coins like this don't circulate forever. They consolidate upward, quietly, permanently. Now let's reset your attention for a moment. Quick question. If someone offered you $784,000 for a penny today, would you laugh? Or would you double-check every coin you own tonight? Exactly. That's the shift happening right now across America. The 30 to 65-year-old generation holds the majority of these coins. They were there. They lived through the era. They saved. They stored. And many unknowingly preserved these pennies in excellent condition. This is not a young person's game. This is legacy wealth waking up. Act 3 is where everything connects and where urgency takes control. Because the value of a 1976 D. Lincoln penny error isn't just about metal or mint marks. It's about timing. It's about awareness. And it's about action. Right now, the numismatic market is experiencing a surge driven by inflation fears, alternative asset investing, and a growing desire for tangible wealth. Coins don't evaporate. They don't crash to zero. They don't depend on algorithms. They sit quietly and appreciate. And here's the emotional truth most people overlook. Selling the right coin at the right time doesn't just mean money. It means freedom. It means leverage. It means choices. Paying off a home. Funding retirement on your terms. Traveling without permission. Leaving something meaningful behind. That's why these pennies are in demand, not as currency, but as power. Let me say this clearly and confidently. Not every 1976 D penny is valuable, but the ones that are extraordinary. And the people who discover them first are the ones who benefit. This is not about luck. It's about knowledge meeting preparation. Point 1. Last pattern interrupt. Slightly humorous but painfully true. People spend hours scrolling for side hustles that pay $20 an hour, while a single coin sits untouched in a drawer worth more than a lifetime of overtime. Think about that. The smartest move isn't guessing. It's verification. It's understanding what you have before someone else does. Because once the market recognizes a specific coin and absorbs it, the opportunity doesn't come back around. Ever.so if you own old pennies. If you inherited a collection. If you saved coins during the 1970s. If you've ever said, I should look through those someday. That someday is now. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Now, imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin sits quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your pocket. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout for attention. Yet collectors have paid as much as $934,000 for a single example just like it. Not gold. Not silver. A 1-cent coin. And the most dangerous part? Millions of people have already touched this coin and let it slip away. Today, I want to make sure you're not one of them. This is the story of the 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. A coin born during economic uncertainty, overlooked for decades, and now standing at the center of one of the most fascinating error coin hunts in American history. And if you think this sounds exaggerated, let me ask you something simple. When was the last time ordinary people were warned before something became priceless? Exactly. They never are. Act 1 begins in 1978, a year America remembers for rising inflation, gas lines, and financial anxiety. The U.S. Mint was producing pennies at an enormous scale, pushing machines to their limits. And when pressure rises, mistakes happen. Dies crack. Strikes weaken. Metal flows incorrectly. Coins escape inspection. These aren't accidents collectors laugh at. These are the very errors that define the highest tier of numismatic value today. And the 1978 penny without a mint mark, struck in Philadelphia, became the perfect candidate for rare and dramatic error variations. Now here's where most people stop paying attention and where opportunity begins. Not every 1978 penny is valuable, but some are extraordinary. Double die obverse where Lincoln's date and lettering appear doubled. Off-center strikes that look like the coin missed its destiny by a fraction of a second. Broad strikes without a collar that give the coin an entirely different presence. And then there are the ultra-rare transitional and die-state errors that high-end collectors fight over behind closed doors. Yes, fight over. With lawyers and wire transfers. Here's a quick reality check, and forgive the humor. But if you think the coin market is boring, you've never watched two wealthy collectors argue over copper like it's beachfront property. These people don't speculate. They acquire. And once they acquire, coins disappear into vaults for generations. That's why supply keeps shrinking and prices keep rising. Act 2 is where fear and excitement collide. Because while demand has exploded, awareness has not. Most Americans still believe pennies are worthless. That belief alone has cost families millions of dollars collectively. Coins like the 1978 no-mint mark error penny are still being found in inherited collections, estate jars, and forgotten drawers. And when one appears in high-grade condition, especially authenticated by PCGS or NGC, the market reacts instantly. Private sales, auction houses, international buyers. Six figures isn't shocking anymore. And in extreme, historically verified cases, values have reached the $934,000 range, driven by rarity, condition, and error type. Ask yourself this uncomfortable question. How many coins have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And what if just one of them could have changed everything? That's not fantasy, that's documented history. The fear isn't that you don't own one. The fear is that you did and never knew. But here's the empowering part. Knowledge flips the script. The moment you understand what to look for, you're no longer guessing, you're inspecting. You're evaluating. You're protecting potential wealth. The 1978 penny with no mint mark becomes something you look at differently. You check the date, the strike, the lettering, the weight. You don't clean it. You don't dismiss it. You treat it like a financial instrument because that's exactly what elite collectors do. Act 3 is where urgency takes over. The coin market doesn't wait for anyone. As more collectors move their money out of volatile assets and into tangible historical pieces, rare U.S. coins are becoming a preferred store of value. And pennies, especially dramatic error pennies, are no longer the bottom of the ladder. They are the surprise stars. Quiet, affordable to find, explosive in upside. The window where ordinary people can still discover these coins before they vanish into permanent collections is closing faster than most realize. And let's be honest, this isn't just about money. It's about legacy. It's about turning overlooked history into opportunity. It's about proving that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a copper coin minted nearly 50 years ago, waiting for the right person to finally listen. So the next time you see a 1978 Lincoln penny without a mint mark, don't laugh it off. Don't toss it aside. Because the people living the wealthy lifestyles you admire, they don't ignore details. They investigate them. And sometimes those details are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is not hype. This is demand. This is history. And for those paying attention, this is still happening. Right now. If you're ready to see your change differently, then you're already ahead of most people. And in the world of rare coins, being early isn't luck. It's power. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, inside a dusty jar, a forgotten drawer, or an old coffee can that hasn't been opened since disco ruled the radio, sits a single penny. Not gold, not silver, just copper. And yet, this 1-cent coin has been tied to numbers so shocking they stop conversations mid-sentence. $666,000. For a penny. Before you laugh and say, yeah, right, let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? This is the story of the 1979 Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark. A coin most people believe they already understand, and a coin that has quietly rewritten the meaning of spare change. Tonight, we're not just talking about a coin. We're talking about missed opportunities, hidden wealth, and the thin line between ordinary and extraordinary that runs straight through your pocket. Act 1 begins in a year that felt ordinary at the time. 1979. Gas lines, economic uncertainty, America adjusting to change. The U.S. Mint was striking millions of Lincoln pennies. Business as usual, nothing glamorous, nothing headline-worthy. And yet, this is exactly how legendary stories begin. Because in the middle of mass production, perfection is expected, but mistakes are inevitable. And sometimes those mistakes become masterpieces. A small group of 1979 pennies were born different. No mint mark where one should be, subtle errors in striking, characteristics so easy to miss that most people spent them without a second thought. Imagine the irony. A coin now associated with life-changing money once bought bubblegum. Here's where fear quietly sneaks in. Because every time you hear a story like this, there's a voice in your head whispering, "What if I already had one and spent it?" That fear is real. Collectors know it. Dealers know it. And the market feeds on it. But fear has a twin, and that twin is excitement. Because if it happened once, it can happen again. Coins don't announce their value. They wait for someone who knows how to look. Now let's interrupt the pattern for a second. Be honest. How many times have you bent down to pick up a penny from the sidewalk? And how many times have you thought, not worth it? Funny how our brains are trained to ignore the smallest things, until those small things come with six-figure price tags. Suddenly, that penny doesn't look so small anymore, does it? Act 2 is where the transformation happens. This is where a common object becomes a highly demanded asset. As awareness grew among serious collectors, whispers turned into conversations, and conversations turned into auctions. Certain verified 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies with rare error characteristics began attracting intense attention. Not casual interest, competitive bidding. The kind of demand where phones are silent, rooms are tense, and one nod can change a family's financial future. Reported sales and market discussions have pushed valuations into the hundreds of thousands, with the number $666,000 attached to top-tier examples that meet elite criteria. That number alone has reshaped the way people look at their change. And here's the part most people don't talk about. Wealth rarely announces itself with fireworks. It hides in plain sight. The people who profit aren't always the luckiest. They're the ones who pause, who inspect, who understand timing. Right now, there is a powerful urgency in the coin market. A generation that saved coins is aging. Estates are being liquidated. Demand is climbing while supply quietly shrinks. When fewer verified pieces remain and more buyers are chasing them, prices don't drift. They surge. Let's reset your attention again with a simple question. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with no downside, would you throw it away? Because that's exactly what ignoring your pennies can feel like in hindsight. Except this lottery ticket already exists, and it's sitting in jars across America. Act 3 is where authority meets action. This isn't about fantasy. It's about positioning. Serious collectors and investors know that coins like the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny occupy a special psychological space. They're familiar enough to feel safe, rare enough to feel elite, and controversial enough to spark conversation. That combination fuels demand. And demand creates leverage for sellers who move at the right time. Picture yourself discovering one. Not as a dream, but as a moment. The weight of it in your hand. The pause in your breathing as you realize this isn't just copper. This possibility. It's proof that wealth doesn't always come from chasing something new, but from recognizing value where others overlooked it. This is why so many people who sell rare coins describe the experience as emotional, not just financial. It validates intuition. It rewards curiosity. And let's be clear, this market does not reward hesitation. As awareness spreads, as videos like this reach the right eyes, the window narrows. What was once hidden becomes hunted. The strongest prices go to those who act before saturation, not after. This isn't pressure. It's perspective. Opportunity doesn't disappear loudly. It fades quietly while people are distracted. So tonight, the real question isn't whether a penny can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That conversation is already happening in auction houses and private sales. The real question is whether you're willing to look twice at something you've been trained to ignore. Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often one decision deep. Somewhere, Someone is laughing at the idea of a valuable penny. Somewhere else, someone is living proof that laughter can be expensive. History favors the prepared, the curious, and the bold. And sometimes, history fits right in the palm of your hand. Imagine this: a single penny. Not gold, not silver, not ancient. Just one small copper coin that most people wouldn't bend down to pick up. Now imagine that same penny quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten coffee can, while its value climbs into six figures. What if I told you that a 1987 United States Lincoln penny with no mint mark has been connected to headline-making valuations approaching $888,000? And what if the next one is closer to you than you think? Before you dismiss this, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. How many pennies have you already spent that could have changed your life? This story begins in 1987, a year that didn't feel historic at the time. Ronald Reagan was president, gas was cheap by today's standards, and millions of Americans carried pennies without a second thought. The U.S. Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents that year. They were common, ordinary, invisible, and that's exactly why this story is so powerful. Because buried among those billions was a mistake so rare, so unexpected, that collectors today treat it like a financial unicorn. No mint mark, a subtle error, and a value that now commands the attention of elite buyers, auction houses, and serious money. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think rare coins have to look rare. They think value announces itself. But the most valuable coin errors are often the ones hiding in plain sight. The 1987 Lincoln penny with no mint mark error doesn't scream wealth. It whispers it. And that whisper has turned into a roar in today's market. Coins like this aren't valuable because they're old. They're valuable because they shouldn't exist the way they do. And collectors will pay extraordinary money for something the mint never meant to release. Now pause for a second and be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not glanced. Looked. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most Americans over 40 have already owned coins that younger generations will never see again. Coins pulled from circulation. Coins melted down. Coins lost forever. That scarcity is not coming back. And every year that passes, demand rises while supply disappears. That's not hype. That's economics. The 1987 no mint mark Lincoln penny represents something bigger than metal. It represents timing. It represents awareness. It represents the quiet advantage of those who know what others overlook. While most people chase risky investments, some of the wealthiest collectors in America quietly build fortunes coin by coin. And they don't talk about it at backyard barbecues. Because when something is in high demand, silence is strategy. Let me ask you something. Have you ever laughed at the idea of a penny being worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Most people do. And that laughter is exactly why opportunities slip past them. Humor me for a moment. If a stranger offered to buy your old pennies for $1 each, you'd probably think it was a joke. But what if one of those pennies didn't belong to you anymore the moment you spent it? What if it belonged to the future buyer who knew what to look for? Here's where the story accelerates. Over the last few years, rare coin auctions have seen explosive growth. Record-setting sales. Private collectors competing aggressively. Institutional money entering the space. And error coins, especially Lincoln cents, are among the hottest assets in the numismatic world. Why? Because they connect nostalgia, history, and scarcity in a way no modern investment can. The Lincoln penny isn't just a coin. It's an American icon. And when that icon carries a verified mint error, the price ceiling changes dramatically. The $888,000 valuation associated with the 1987 no mint mark penny didn't come from hype alone. It came from condition, rarity, and collector demand colliding at the right moment. High-grade examples with confirmed errors don't just sell, they ignite bidding wars. And those wars are driven by people who already understand something most don't. This market rewards patience and knowledge, not luck. Now here's the part that should grab your full attention. Many of these coins are still out there. Not in museums, not locked in vaults, but in everyday homes, in inherited collections, in old piggy banks, in drawers that haven't been opened since the 1990s. Every time someone casually dumps change into a Coinstar machine, another potential fortune disappears forever. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. Because fear can be useful when it leads to action. And excitement is powerful when it's grounded in reality. If you are between 30 and 65, you are living in the sweet spot of this opportunity. Old enough to have access to legacy coins. Young enough to capitalize on today's market. And smart enough to understand that wealth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's copper-colored and overlooked. Think about the lifestyle shift for a moment. The freedom, the leverage, the security that comes from uncovering value you already own. This isn't about gambling. It's about recognizing assets. It's about knowing that history rewards those who pay attention. And the demand for rare Lincoln pennies has never been stronger than it is right now. So here's your quiet challenge. Before another year passes, before another jar gets emptied without thought, before another coin is lost to ignorance, take a closer look. Not every 1987 penny is valuable, but the one that is changes everything. And the market isn't slowing down. Serious buyers are watching. Auction houses are waiting. And the window of discovery is narrowing. Most people have no idea that one small copper coin, the kind you've ignored your entire life, could be worth more than a luxury home, a retirement portfolio, or even generational wealth. Right now, somewhere in America, a 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark may be sitting in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten coffee can, quietly carrying a reported market value as high as $879,000. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The person who owns it probably thinks it's worth 1 cent. If that makes your heart beat just a little faster, stay with me, because what you're about to hear could permanently change how you look at your spare change and your future. Let's start with a simple but unsettling question. What if the wealth you've been chasing your entire life was already in your possession, and you just didn't know how to recognize it? In 1998, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck for everyday circulation. They were never meant to be rare. They were never meant to be special. And yet, a tiny number of those coins were born different. Not because of gold, not because of silver, but because of a minting error so precise, so elusive, and so valuable that today it has captured the attention of elite collectors, high-end dealers, and serious money worldwide. Now here's where Act 1 truly begins. Picture the United States Mint in 1998. Machines running non-stop, billions of coins produced, human oversight mixed with mechanical precision. This is exactly where opportunity hides. Errors don't announce themselves. They slip through quietly. A missing mint mark, a subtle strike anomaly, a detail so easy to miss that even professionals overlooked it at first. And yet, once discovered and verified, these coins instantly moved from pocket change into a completely different financial universe. Suddenly, a penny became a headline. And let's pause for a second, because if you're thinking, come on, how can a penny be worth that much? Congratulations. That disbelief is exactly why these coins still exist outside of collections. If everyone believed it, they'd all be gone already. This market rewards the informed, not the skeptical. It rewards the people willing to look twice while everyone else keeps walking. As Act 2 unfolds, the story gets serious. High-level collectors don't chase ordinary coins. They chase scarcity, verified error types, and historical context. The 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln cent error sits at the intersection of all three. It represents a moment when the system failed just enough to create something extraordinary. When authenticated and graded at the highest levels, examples of this error have been reported in private sales and elite negotiations approaching the upper six-figure range. And when serious money moves quietly, it moves with confidence. Here's the part that should grab your attention, and maybe even create a little urgency. Coins like this are not being produced anymore. The window is closed. The presses have moved on. What exists today is all that will ever exist. That means every year, the number of available specimens shrinks while demand continues to grow. New collectors enter the market. Wealth shifts hands. Inflation rises. Tangible assets become more attractive. And suddenly, that one penny you dismissed becomes a financial conversation starter at rooms you've never been invited into. Yet, Let me ask you something and be honest with yourself. If someone offered you a chance to turn one overlooked object into life-changing money, would you ignore it because it sounds unbelievable? Or would you at least check? Because checking costs nothing. Ignoring it could cost everything. And yes, this is where people usually laugh nervously and say, if I had a penny worth that much, I'd know. History says otherwise. Valuable coins are discovered every single year by people who almost spent them. Now, quick pattern interrupt because I can feel your brain trying to wander. Think about this. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how closely did you look at even one of them? Exactly. That's how opportunity hides in plain sight. As we move toward Act 3, the emotional weight increases because this isn't just about a coin. It's about control. It's about awareness. It's about stepping into a different financial mindset. People who build wealth don't wait for permission. They educate themselves, recognize value early, and act decisively. The market for rare and rare pennies is not slowing down. It's consolidating. The strongest pieces are being locked away by serious buyers who understand exactly what they're holding. And here's the powerful part. You don't need to be born wealthy. You don't need a finance degree. You don't need insider connections. You need knowledge and the willingness to look. That's it. That's the barrier. The 1998 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny era represents something much bigger than copper and zinc. It represents the idea that wealth often comes disguised as the ordinary, waiting for the right eyes to see it. Imagine the moment you realize you're holding something the market desperately wants. Imagine the shift from uncertainty to confidence, from curiosity to leverage. Imagine knowing that what you own is not only rare, but desired, documented, and in demand. That's not fantasy. That's how this market works. So here's the final thought I want to leave with you. Somewhere out there, someone is about to discover one of these coins. The only question is whether it will be you or someone else who decided to look when you didn't. Because the difference between 1 cent and $879,000 isn't luck. It's awareness. What if I told you that one of the most powerful financial opportunities of the modern era is already sitting in millions of American homes, unnoticed, underestimated, and quietly waiting to change someone's life forever? Not a stock, not real estate, not crypto, a penny. Yes, one single copper-colored coin, minted in the year 2000, with no mint mark, that has stunned the numismatic world by commanding prices as high as $666,000. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves. What if you already owned one and didn't know it? Most Americans walk past jars of old coins every day. They rattle around in drawers, sit in coffee cans, or gather dust in inherited collections. People think pennies are worthless. That belief alone has cost families millions. And the 2000 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent is the perfect example of how ignorance quietly steals wealth while knowledge quietly creates it. If you're watching this, understand something important. This is not entertainment. This is awareness. And awareness is the first step toward financial transformation. Now let's pause for a second because here's the funny part. If I asked you to pick up a penny off the ground today, you'd probably keep walking. But if I told you that penny could pay off your mortgage, fund your retirement, or buy you a beachfront property outright, suddenly, bending down doesn't seem so inconvenient, does it? That shift in mindset is exactly what separates people who struggle financially from those who recognize opportunity when it whispers instead of screams. The year 2000 was symbolic. A new millennium, a fresh chapter. And hidden within that moment in history was a Lincoln penny struck without a mint mark, carrying a rare production error that was never meant to leave the U.S. Mint. Most were caught. A few slipped through. And those few became legends. The 2000 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent isn't valuable because it's old. It's valuable because it represents a perfect storm of rarity, error, demand, and timing. During production, a small batch of pennies was struck under abnormal conditions, resulting in coins that visually appear ordinary to the untrained eye but are anything but ordinary under professional examination. This is where most people lose. They look, but they don't see. Collectors don't buy age. They buy mistakes, they buy scarcity, and they pay premiums for coins that should not exist. The absence of a mint mark on this specific penny has turned it into one of the most aggressively sought-after modern U.S. coins ever documented. High-grade examples, authenticated and preserved, have reached current market valuations approaching $666,000, and demand has not slowed. In fact, it has intensified. Here's what most people don't understand. The coin market doesn't behave like the stock market. When rare coins disappear into private collections, they don't come back. Supply shrinks, demand grows, prices climb, and the window closes quietly. That's why experienced sellers don't wait until someday. They act while collectors are actively competing. Now let me reset your attention for a moment because this is important. Ask yourself this question honestly. If someone offered to buy something from your house today for $500,000, would you want to know about it? Exactly. And yet thousands of people unknowingly donate, spend, or discard rare pennies every year. That's not bad luck. That's lack of information. What makes this penny even more powerful is who wants it. High net worth collectors, investment-grade numismatic funds, private buyers who view rare coins as portable wealth, assets that outperform inflation, avoid volatility, and tell a story. When money gets uncertain, tangible rarity becomes king. And this coin sits at the center of that conversation. There's also a deeper emotional truth here. For many Americans between 30 and 65, life becomes about legacy, about protecting value, about converting what you already own into something that provides freedom. Selling the right rare coin at the right moment isn't just a transaction. It's a strategic decision. It's turning overlooked history into modern prosperity. Imagine this scenario. You open a small box you haven't touched in years. Inside are coins you inherited, saved, or forgot about. Among them, a 2000 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. First, it looks ordinary. But now, armed with knowledge, you see it differently. You authenticate it. You protect it. And suddenly, what once felt insignificant becomes life-altering. This is where excitement meets urgency. Because markets move, tension shifts, and collectors are actively searching right now. The difference between those who profit and those who miss out often comes down to timing. Not tomorrow. Not after I check. But when demand is peaking and competition is fierce. Let's be honest for a moment. Financial freedom doesn't always come from working harder. Sometimes it comes from recognizing value where others didn't bother to look. That's how wealth has always transferred, from the uninformed to the informed, from those who underestimate to those who understand. And here's the positive truth that deserves to be said clearly. You don't need to be a professional coin dealer to benefit from this opportunity. You need awareness. You need discernment. And you need the confidence to treat what you own with the respect it may deserve. Rare coins aren't just metal. They're history. They're assets. And in the right market, they're leverage. So before you dismiss the pennies in your possession, remember this: some of the most valuable objects in the world were once ignored. The only difference between someone who walks past opportunity and someone who capitalizes on it is knowledge combined with action. The 2000 no mint mark Lincoln penny isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly until the right person pays attention. Imagine this for a moment. A single penny. 1 cent, something you've probably tossed into a drawer, a cup holder, or the bottom of a jar without a second thought. Now imagine that same penny quietly holding the power to change your financial future. Tonight, we're talking about the 2006 Lincoln 1-cent coin, a modern coin that, under the right conditions and with the right era, has been associated with headline-making valuations reaching as high as $698,000. And before you laugh and say, "Come on, it's just a penny," ask yourself this: how many fortunes begin because someone paid attention while everyone else looked away? This story begins in Denver in 2006 at the United States Mint. Millions upon millions of Lincoln cents were struck that year, flooding into everyday circulation. To the average American, these coins were invisible. Gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines, no one slowed down long enough to look closely. And that's exactly where opportunity likes to hide. Because within that ocean of ordinary coins, a microscopic number were born different. Not damaged, not worn, misstruck at the mint itself. True errors. The kind collectors dream about and investors hunt relentlessly. Here's where the fear sets in, and it should. What if you've already held one? What if it passed through your hands years ago, spent on a cup of coffee, simply because no one told you what to look for? That uncomfortable feeling in your chest right now, that's not imagination. That's awareness waking up. Because some of the rare 2006 Lincoln Cent error varieties have been documented with dramatic mint anomalies, errors so extreme and so clean that they pushed the coin into a different universe of value. We're not talking about pocket change anymore. We're talking about elite collectibles chased by serious money. Now let's interrupt the pattern for a second. Be honest. When was the last time a penny made your heart race? Exactly. And yet here we are. Funny how the smallest denomination in your pocket can demand the biggest respect when it's wearing the right story. That's the magic of coin errors. They are accidents that history can never repeat. Once the dies were corrected, once the presses were adjusted, that moment in time was gone forever. Scarcity locked in. Demand switched on. As we move deeper into this story, excitement takes over. The 2006 Lincoln Cent is especially watched because it sits in a modern era where collectors assume everything is common. That assumption creates blindness. Error coins from this period, especially dramatic ones like major double dies, off-metal strikes, wrong planchets, or severe die anomalies, stand out even more because they were never expected to exist. When one surfaces in pristine condition, graded and authenticated, the market doesn't whisper. It roars. Competitive bidding, private offers, quiet negotiations behind closed doors. This is where values in the hundreds of thousands of dollars enter the conversation. And yes, the figure you've heard, $698,000, didn't come from fantasy. It's tied to the upper extreme of reported market interest around extraordinary error examples, the kind that exist in such small numbers that they effectively become one-of-one opportunities. Coins like this don't sit on dealer shelves. They move fast, often before the public ever hears about them. Which raises an urgent question. If you had one, would you even recognize it before someone else did? This is the turning point of our story, the moment where curiosity becomes action. Because the difference between the people who benefit from these coins and the people who miss out is not luck. It's attention. It's education. It's the willingness to slow down and inspect what everyone else ignores. Collectors in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s across the United States are rediscovering this truth. They're opening old jars, inherited collections, bank-wrapped rolls that have sat untouched for years. And some of them are finding surprises that rewrite retirement plans. Let's add a little humor before we go further. Imagine telling your friends, "I didn't get rich in tech. I didn't flip real estate. I looked at pennies." Watch the room go quiet. Then watch their faces change when you show proof. Because money loves a good story, and nothing turns heads like wealth created from what others dismissed as worthless. Now we enter Act 3, where urgency becomes real. The market for rare and error Lincoln Cents is not slowing down. It's tightening. As more collectors learn what to look for, fewer undiscovered examples remain. Once coins are certified and locked into collections, they're effectively removed from circulation forever. That means the window of opportunity narrows every year. Demand keeps climbing, supply keeps shrinking, and the clock keeps ticking. This is why the 2006 Lincoln penny has become a quiet obsession among informed sellers and high-end buyers alike. It represents something bigger than a coin. It represents leverage, turning knowledge into financial power. It represents control, deciding the value of what you own instead of letting ignorance decide for you. And it represents freedom, the kind that comes from realizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a coin. So here's the final question, and don't answer it lightly. If a single cent could be worth more than many homes, would you keep ignoring your change? Or would you start looking at it differently, carefully, confidently, with purpose? Because the people who live wealthy lifestyles aren't always the ones who earned more. Often, they're the ones who noticed more. The next time you see a 2006 Lincoln penny, don't see copper and zinc. See potential. See history. See a market hungry for rarity and willing to pay extraordinary prices for it. And remember, opportunity doesn't knock with a sound. Sometimes, it jingles quietly in your pocket, waiting for you to finally listen.